The stars stretched endlessly across the void, a tapestry of light and shadow that seemed infinite to those who dared to look. Captain Cal Draven stood on the bridge of his ship, the Iron Resolve *, staring out at the expanse with a mixture of awe and weariness. He had spent years patrolling the outer rim of human-controlled space, navigating regions where few others ventured. It was lonely work, but Cale didn't mind. Solitude suited him. After all, it matched the emptiness he carried inside. Cale was not an ordinary man. Standing tall with broad shoulders and sharp features etched by years of hardship, he was known as one of Earth's most formidable warriors. His reputation preceded him, a soldier who could turn the tide of battle with sheer determination and skill. Yet despite his strength, there was something haunted about him, a quiet sadness in his eyes that no amount of victory could erase. It came from loss of family, friends, and innocence, all casualties of humanity's relentless expansion into the cosmos. On this particular day, however, fate had other plans for Cal. As the Iron Resolve * drifted through the debris field near a dying star, its sensors picked up an anomaly. A faint signal, barely detectable amidst the static, emanated from what appeared to be a derelict escape pod adrift in the wreckage. Cale frowned, leaning forward in his chair. "Bring it up on screen," he ordered, his voice low and gravelly. The image flickered to life before him, a small battered vessel floating silently against the backdrop of the collapsing star. Its surface was scorched, its systems clearly damaged. Escape pods like these were rarely found intact so far from civilization. Something, or someone, had gone terribly wrong here. "Should we investigate, Captain?" asked Tessa, his co-pilot, her holographic form shimmering beside him. Her tone was calm, almost curious, devoid of emotion yet somehow comforting. Cale hesitated only briefly. Protocol dictated caution. Countless dangers lurked in uncharted space, but something tugged at him, an instinctive pull he couldn't ignore. "Prepare the shuttle," he said finally, rising from his seat. "I'll take a closer look." Minutes later, Cale stepped out of the airlock onto the desolate hull of the escape pod. Clad in his reinforced suit, he moved cautiously, scanning for signs of danger. The pod's exterior bore scars of conflict, blaster burns, dents, and fractures. But nothing suggested immediate peril. Reaching the hatch, he keyed in an override sequence, prying it open with practiced ease. Inside, the scene was startling. Two figures lay unconscious among the remnants of shattered equipment. They weren't human. Their sleek silver skin shimmered faintly even in the dim emergency lighting, their elongated limbs draped over makeshift seats. One was older, her face serene despite her injuries, while the other, clearly younger, clutched fragments of some kind of artifact close to her chest. Both were dressed in flowing garments adorned with intricate patterns, though they were torn and singed from whatever ordeal they'd endured. Cale crouched beside them, checking for vital signs. To his relief, both were alive, though weak. He noticed the artifact immediately, a crystalline object pulsing faintly with an inner light. Its energy felt strange, almost alive. Whatever it wasn't ordinary technology. Instinct told him it was important, perhaps even dangerous. "Tessa," Cale murmured into his comlink, "we've got survivors. Zalari, judging by their appearance. Get medical supplies ready." The Zalari were a mysterious race, known more for their reclusive nature than anything else. Humanity's interactions with them had been fraught with tension, bordering on hostility. For decades, rumors swirled about their advanced technology and rumored psychic abilities. Few humans had ever seen them up close, let alone interacted with them. And now, here they were, injured, vulnerable, and entirely dependent on him. As Cal secured the artifact and prepared to carry the two aliens back to his ship, questions flooded his mind. Who were they? Why were they out here alone? And why did they have such a powerful-looking device in their possession? Back aboard *, the Iron Resolve *, Kale monitored the Zalari closely as they began to stir. The older one woke first, her luminous eyes locking onto his with a mixture of fear and defiance. She spoke softly, her melodic voice laced with urgency, though her words were unintelligible. Kale raised his hand slowly, palm outward, signaling peace. "You're safe," he said gently, hoping she might understand the sentiment, if not the language itself. It wasn't until the younger one stirred that real communication became possible. With halting phrases and gestures, Kale pieced together fragments of their story. They were princesses. Lyora, the elder, and Nyx, her spirited sibling, from the Zalari homeworld. They had fled their own people, pursued by a faction called the Obsidian Accord, which sought control of the artifact they carried. Known as the Heart of Eternus, it was said to hold unimaginable power, power capable of reshaping reality itself. Listening to their tale, Kale felt a pang of recognition. Power struggles, betrayal, sacrifice. It was a narrative he knew too well. But this time, it wasn't just about survival. These two beings, so different from him, yet undeniably fragile, needed help. And though every logical part of him screamed to leave them behind, to avoid entangling himself in alien politics, something deeper compelled him to act. Perhaps it was the memory of his own losses, the faces of loved ones lost to war. Or perhaps it was simply the spark of hope ignited by their courage. Whatever it was, Kale made his decision then and there. He would protect them. As Lyora watched him, her expression softened slightly, gratitude flickering in her gaze. Nyx, still groggy, muttered something under her breath that sounded suspiciously like a challenge. Kale allowed himself a faint smile. This journey was bound to be complicated, but it wouldn't be dull. And so, with the dying star casting long shadows across the void, Captain Kale Draven set course for destinations unknown, carrying with him not just passengers, but the seeds of destiny ### Part 2, a fragile alliance. The hum of Asterisk, the iron resolve Asterisk, reverberated through its metallic corridors as Captain Kale Draven stood in the medical bay, watching over his unexpected guests. Lyora, the elder princess, lay still on one of the biobeds, her silver skin shimmering faintly under the soft glow of the overhead lights. Her injuries were healing steadily thanks to advanced human medical technology, but her expression remained guarded, even in sleep. Beside her, Nyx stirred restlessly, muttering incoherently in her native tongue. Though younger and more impulsive, she had already proven herself fiery and unpredictable, traits that made Kale both wary and curious. Kale leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his mind racing with questions. Why had these two alien royals been targeted by their own kind? What was so significant about the artifact they carried, the Heart of Eternus, that it warranted such desperate measures? And most importantly, why had he decided to intervene when every ounce of logic screamed at him to walk away? Tessa's voice interrupted his thoughts. "Captain," she said softly, her holographic form flickering into view beside him. "The Zalari language database is incomplete, but I've managed to translate some key phrases from their earlier conversation. They mentioned Obsidian Accord multiple times, along with references to betrayal and destruction." Kale nodded grimly. "So we're dealing with internal conflict among the Zalari." He glanced at the sisters again. "Not exactly our problem." "Yet you chose to help them," Tessa replied matter-of-factly. There was no judgment in her tone, only curiosity. "I did," Kale admitted after a pause. "But that doesn't mean I trust them, or their mission." Before Tessa could respond, Nyx's eyes fluttered open. She blinked groggily, taking in her surroundings before her gaze landed on Kale. For a moment, there was silence, a tense standoff between the human warrior and the alien princess. Then, without warning, Nyx sat upright, clutching the sheets tightly. Her voice was sharp, tinged with accusation. "Where is my sister? What have you done with her?" "She's right here," Kale said calmly, stepping aside to reveal Lyora. "Both of you are safe, for now." Nyx narrowed her luminous eyes, studying him intently. "And what do you want in return for your kindness?" The word came out like an insult, dripping with suspicion. Kale raised an eyebrow. "Nothing," he replied simply. "Not yet, anyway." Her skepticism was palpable, but before she could press further, Leora stirred awake. Her movements were deliberate, graceful despite her weakened state. When she spoke, her voice carried a quiet authority that commanded attention. "Captain Draven," she began, her accent lilting but clear, "you've saved our lives. We owe you a debt." "No debts," Kale interjected firmly. "Just answers. Who are you running from? And why does this artifact matter so much?" Leora hesitated, glancing at Nyx before continuing. "We are princesses of the Zalari people, or what remains of them. Our homeworld fell to the Obsidian Accord years ago. They seek dominion not just over our race, but over all who stand in their path. The heart of Eternus, it holds power beyond measure. If they obtain it, they will use it to enslave entire civilizations." Kale absorbed this information silently. It wasn't the first time he heard tales of tyrants seeking ultimate power, but something about Leora's words struck a chord within him. Perhaps it was the weight of responsibility in her voice, or the fear lingering beneath her composed exterior. Whatever it was, it reminded him too much of his own battles against oppression. "And what makes you think I can stop them?" he asked finally, his tone measured. "You don't need to stop them," Nyx snapped, unable to stay silent any longer. "You just need to get us to Velora. Once there, we can reactivate the heart and use its power to fight back." Kale turned his piercing gaze toward her. "Reactivating something that powerful sounds risky. What happens if it goes wrong?" "It won't," Nyx shot back defiantly. "Not if we follow protocol." "And if you don't?" Kale countered, his voice hardening. "I'm not risking my ship or my life for a gamble." Leora placed a gentle hand on Nyx's arm, silencing her sister's retort. "Captain," she said evenly, "we understand your concerns. But know this, the alternative is far worse. If the Accord retrieves the heart, countless worlds, including yours, will suffer unimaginably." For a long moment, Kale said nothing. He looked between the two sisters, weighing their words against his instincts. On one hand, helping them meant diving headfirst into a conflict he barely understood, involving a species notorious for keeping humans at arm's length. On the other hand, walking away would mean abandoning them, and possibly condemning untold numbers to suffering. Finally, he exhaled sharply. "Fine, I'll take you to Velora. But understand this, I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, not because I trust either of you." A flicker of relief passed over Leora's face, though she quickly masked it with composure. Nyx, however, rolled her eyes dramatically. "Righteous heroics suit you, human," she muttered under her breath. Kale ignored her jibe, turning to leave the medical bay. "Rest up," he called over his shoulder. "We'll reach Velora in 3 days, if we're lucky." As the hours passed, tensions aboard Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, simmered just below the surface. Leora and Nyx were given quarters adjacent to the main living area, where they spent much of their time examining the fragments of the heart of Eternus. Kale kept his distance, observing them from afar, while Tessa monitored their activities discreetly. Despite their gratitude, the sisters remained cautious, speaking in hushed tones whenever they thought no one was listening. One evening, as Kale sat alone in the mess hall nursing a cup of synthetic coffee, Nyx entered unannounced. She hesitated at the doorway, clearly unsure whether to approach him or retreat. After a brief internal debate, she strode forward, plopping down across from him with a dramatic sigh. "You're brooding," she declared bluntly, eyeing him critically. "Is that a human thing, or is it just you?" Kale smirked faintly. "It's called thinking. You should try it sometime." Nyx bristled, but didn't rise to the bait. Instead, she leaned forward, resting her elbows on the table. "Look, I know you don't trust us. Fine. But you should know we didn't ask for your help. We're just trying to survive. And I'm just trying to figure out why I care, Kale replied honestly. Helping strangers isn't exactly my specialty. Nyx tilted her head, studying him with newfound interest. Maybe it's because deep down, you're not as cold as you pretend to be. Kale chuckled dryly. Trust me, kid, I'm colder than space itself. To his surprise, Nyx smiled, a genuine, fleeting grin that softened her otherwise sharp features. We'll see about that, she said cryptically before rising to leave. As she disappeared down the corridor, Kale shook his head, bemused. These two aliens were proving to be more trouble than he'd anticipated, but also far more intriguing. Somewhere between their defiance and vulnerability, he found himself beginning to care, not just about their survival, but about the cause they represented. Later that night, as the Iron Resolve hurtled through the stars, Kale found himself standing once again on the bridge, staring out at the endless void. Behind him, the faint sound of laughter echoed from the living area, Liora and Nyx sharing a rare moment of levity. For the first time in years, Kale felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this alliance, fragile as it was, could lead to something greater. But as the ship sailed onward, the shadows of doubt lingered. The road ahead would be fraught with danger, and trust was a luxury neither side could afford to waste. Still, Kale knew one thing for certain. Whatever happened next, he wouldn't face it alone. Part 3. Shadows closing in. The hum of the Iron Resolve grew louder as Captain Kale Draven piloted the ship through a dense asteroid field, his hand steady on the controls. The jagged rocks loomed like silent sentinels, their surfaces glinting faintly under the distant light of a dying star. It had been 2 days since Cal agreed to escort Liora and Nyx to Valora, and already the journey felt far more perilous than he'd anticipated. Every jump through hyperspace, every twist and turn around celestial debris, brought with it the gnawing sense that they weren't alone. Cal's suspicions were confirmed when Tessa's voice broke the tense silence of the bridge. "Captain," she said, her holographic form flickering into view beside him. "Long-range sensors have detected multiple ships approaching from behind. They're closing fast." Kale frowned, leaning forward in his seat. "Identification unknown," Tessa replied after a moment's pause. "But based on their trajectory and speed, they appear to be pursuing us." "Pursuing us?" Nyx exclaimed, entering the bridge with Liora close behind. Her expression was a mix of alarm and frustration. "They found us already." "How?" Liora placed a calming hand on her sister's shoulder, though her own eyes betrayed worry. "The Accord must have traced our escape pod's distress signal. We knew they wouldn't give up easily." Kale clenched his jaw, gripping the control yoke tighter. "Well, now we've got company. Brace yourselves. This is about to get messy." Without hesitation, Kale maneuvered the Iron Resolve into a sharp dive, weaving between the asteroids with practiced precision. The pursuing ships followed suit, their sleek designs betraying their origin. Obsidian Accord vessels, sleek, black, and menacing, they moved with predatory grace, firing bursts of energy that narrowly missed the hull of Cal's ship. "Tessa, activate defensive systems," Kale ordered, his voice calm but firm. "Divert all available power to shields and weapons." "Affirmative," Tessa responded, her tone unwavering despite the chaos unfolding around them. The ship shuddered as another blast struck its shield, sending sparks flying across the console. Nyx gripped the back of Cal's chair, her knuckles white. "Can your ship handle this?" she asked, her bravado faltering slightly. "It'll have to," Kale replied tersely, dodging another volley of fire. He glanced over his shoulder at the sisters. "Get to the lower deck and strap in. Things are about to get rough." Liora nodded, pulling Nyx toward the exit. "Be careful, Captain," she said softly before disappearing down the corridor. As the princesses retreated, Kale focused entirely on the task at hand. His instincts kicked in, years of training guiding his movements as he pushed the Iron Resolve to its limits. The ship darted through narrow gaps between asteroids, forcing the Accord vessels to break formation or risk collision. One enemy ship wasn't so lucky. It clipped a massive rock, spinning out of control before exploding in a brilliant flash of light. "That's one down," Cale muttered under his breath, satisfaction flickering briefly in his eyes. But there were still 3 ships left, and they weren't giving up. Suddenly, the ship rocked violently as a direct hit breached the outer layer of the shields. Warning alarms blared throughout the cabin, red lights flashing urgently. "Shields at 60%, Tessa reported. "Another hit like that could disable critical systems." Cale gritted his teeth, scanning the battlefield for an advantage. Then he noticed something. A cluster of smaller asteroids forming a natural bottleneck ahead. If he could lure the remaining ships into the tight passage, he might be able to use the terrain against them. "Hold on," he growled, pushing the throttle forward. The Iron Resolve surged ahead, diving straight into the narrow gap. The Accord ships hesitated for only a moment before following, unwilling to let their prey escape. Inside the bottleneck, Cale executed a daring maneuver. He spun the ship around sharply, firing a concentrated burst of plasma at the nearest asteroid. The impact caused a chain reaction, sending fragments hurtling toward the pursuing ships. Caught off guard, 2 of the Accord vessels collided with the debris, their hulls tearing apart as they exploded in twin bursts of flame. "One more to go," Cale muttered, sweat trickling down his temple. But the final ship was smarter than the others, hanging back and waiting for an opening. Its cannons fired relentlessly, chipping away at the Iron Resolve's already weakened shields. "We can't keep this up much longer," Tessa warned. "Shields are down to 20%. Cale's mind raced, searching for a solution. Then he remembered something: the artifact. The Heart of Eternus. Though damaged, it still pulsed faintly with energy. Could it be used as a weapon? "Tessa, reroute auxiliary power to the containment chamber holding the artifact," he instructed. "I want you to amplify its energy output, enough to create a localized EMP pulse." Tessa hesitated, her holographic form flickering uncertainly. "Captain, that level of energy discharge could destabilize the artifact further. There's no guarantee it won't destroy us as well." "It's a risk we'll have to take," Cale replied grimly. "Do it." Moments later, the artifact began to glow brighter, its light filling the cabin with an otherworldly radiance. Cale activated the external emitters, releasing a wave of electromagnetic energy that rippled outward like a shockwave. The Accord ship's systems sputtered and died instantly, leaving it adrift in space. For a brief moment, silence reigned aboard the Iron Resolve Then, slowly, Cale allowed himself to exhale. "Status report," he demanded, his voice hoarse from tension. "All hostiles neutralized," Tessa confirmed. "Shields are holding at 15%. No significant structural damage detected." Cale slumped back in his chair, running a hand over his face. He had done it. They had survived. But the victory felt hollow. The artifact's energy reserves were nearly depleted, and the Accord would undoubtedly send reinforcements soon. They needed to reach Velora, and fast. When the sisters returned to the bridge, their expressions shifted from relief to concern as they took in the state of the ship. Lyora approached Cale cautiously, her luminous eyes filled with gratitude. "You saved us again," she said quietly. "Thank you." Cale shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "Don't thank me yet. That little stunt cost us dearly. The artifact's power is almost gone, and the Accord knows where we're headed. We've bought ourselves some time, but not much." Nyx crossed her arms, her fiery spirit returning despite the ordeal. "So what do we do now? Sit here and wait for them to catch up?" "No," Cale replied firmly. "We push forward. From here, we'll need to navigate through the Veil, a region of unstable space littered with gravitational anomalies. It's treacherous, but if we make it through, We'll cut days off our travel time to Velora. And if we don't? Nick's challenge, raising an eyebrow. Then we'll deal with that when it happens, Kale said simply. Right now, we focus on survival. As Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk entered the Veil, the atmosphere aboard the ship grew tense. The gravitational distortions tugged at the vessel, causing it to lurch unpredictably. Instruments malfunctioned, and navigation became increasingly difficult. Yet through it all, Kale remained resolute, his determination unwavering. Lyra watched him closely, marveling at his resilience. She had heard tales of human warriors, but none quite like Kal Draven. Beneath his gruff exterior lay a man driven by a deep sense of duty, a protector willing to risk everything for those who couldn't protect themselves. Nyx, meanwhile, paced restlessly, her impatience bubbling over. How long until we're out of this death trap? She demanded, glaring at the swirling chaos outside the viewport. Soon enough, Kale replied without looking away from the controls. Just hold tight. Hours passed, each minute feeling like an eternity. Finally, just as hope began to wane, the turbulence subsided and the stars beyond the veil came into view once more. A collective sigh of relief swept through the crew, or rather, the makeshift family that had formed aboard the ship. We made it, Lyra whispered, her voice tinged with awe. For now, Kal corrected, though a faint smile played at the corners of his lips. But don't get too comfortable. We're not out of danger yet. As Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk sailed onward, the bond between the unlikely allies grew stronger. Though shadows still lingered, threatening to engulf them at every turn, they faced them together. And somewhere in the vastness of space, amidst the uncertainty and peril, a fragile alliance began to solidify, not just between humans and Zalari, but between hearts united by shared struggle and hope. Part 4, Bonds Beyond Species. The journey through the veil had left Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, battered but intact, its systems strained to their limits. Captain Kal Draven leaned back in his chair on the bridge, staring at the stars streaking past the viewport. The ship hummed softly beneath him, a comforting reminder that they were still moving forward despite everything. Yet for all the progress they'd made, Kal couldn't shake the weight of what lay ahead. Velora was closer now, but so too were the shadows chasing them. Behind him, Lyra and Nyx worked quietly together in the corner of the bridge, piecing together fragments of the heart of Eternus. The artifact's faint glow pulsed erratically, a sign of its dwindling energy reserves. Though damaged, it remained their best chance at stopping the Obsidian Accord, or so the sisters claimed. Kale wasn't entirely convinced, but he trusted their desperation more than he doubted their intentions. They were fighting for something greater than themselves, just as he once had. Captain. Tessa's voice interrupted his thoughts, her holographic form flickering into view beside him. We're approaching a nearby moon with breathable atmosphere and stable gravity. It might be wise to make repairs before continuing onward. Kale nodded thoughtfully. Good call. Set coordinates and prepare for landing. As the ship descended toward the moon's surface, Kale couldn't help but notice how different the dynamic aboard Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, had become. When they first met, the Zalari princesses had been wary of him, guarded, almost hostile. Now there was an unspoken understanding between them, born from shared trials and mutual respect. Even Nyx, whose sharp tongue often tested his patience, seemed softer around the edges. He caught glimpses of vulnerability beneath her fiery exterior, moments when she let her guard down long enough to reveal the scared young woman hiding behind the bravado. Once landed, Kale led the group outside to assess the damage. The moon's landscape stretched endlessly before them, a barren expanse of gray rock and jagged cliffs under a pale lavender sky. The air was thin but breathable, carrying the faint scent of ozone. Nearby, a small crater provided shelter from the harsh winds whipping across the terrain. This should work, Kale said, gesturing toward the crater. Tessa, start running diagnostics on the ship's systems. Lyora, Nyx, you two focus on stabilizing the artifact. I'll gather supplies and scout the area for anything useful." Lyora nodded, her expression calm but determined. "Understood. Be careful out there." Nyx rolled her eyes playfully. "Yeah, don't get eaten by space monsters or whatever." Kale smirked, grabbing a toolkit and slinging it over his shoulder. "I'll try not to." Hours passed as the team worked tirelessly to ensure Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, could continue its journey. Inside the ship, Tessa monitored repair progress while Lyora and Nyx carefully reassembled the heart of Eternus, their movements precise and deliberate. Outside, Kale scoured the surrounding area for resources, his boots crunching against the rocky ground. Despite the desolation, he found solace in the silence, using the time alone to reflect on everything that had transpired since rescuing the sisters. When he returned to the crater laden with scavenged materials, he found Lyora sitting cross-legged near the entrance, gazing out at the horizon. Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the dim light, and her luminous eyes reflected a mix of sadness and resolve. "You look like you've got a lot on your mind," Kale said, setting the supplies down beside her. Lyora glanced up, offering a faint smile. "Just thinking about home, or what's left of it." Kale sat down across from her, leaning back on his hands. "You miss it?" She hesitated before nodding. "Every day. My people, they weren't perfect, but they deserved better than what the Accord did to them. We were peaceful once, content to live among the stars without interfering with others. But then greed took hold, and everything changed." Kale listened intently, sensing the pain in her voice. "Sounds familiar," he admitted. "Humans have a way of ruining things too. War, conquest, it's always the same story." "But you fight against it," Lyora countered gently. "That's why you're helping us, isn't it? Because deep down, you believe in hope, even if you don't show it." Kale chuckled dryly. "Hope doesn't win battles. Strength does." "Maybe," Lyora replied, tilting her head slightly. "But strength without purpose is meaningless. You've given us purpose, Captain. And for that, we'll never forget you." Her words lingered in the air, leaving Kale momentarily speechless. Before he could respond, Nyx appeared at the edge of the crater, holding up a piece of metallic debris triumphantly. "Hey, old man, look what I found. Think this'll patch up the hull?" Kale stood, shaking off the momentary softness. "Let's see what you've got, kid." Later that evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the moon in shades of deep purple and black, the group gathered around a makeshift fire. The flames crackled softly, providing warmth against the biting cold. For the first time since their journey began, there was laughter, not forced or fleeting, but genuine. Nyx recounted stories of her childhood on the Zalari homeworld, painting vivid pictures of festivals filled with music and light. In turn, Kel shared tales of Earth's history, describing ancient battles and acts of heroism that shaped humanity's evolution. Lyora watched them both, a bittersweet smile tugging at her lips. "It's strange," she mused aloud. "We started this journey as strangers, yet here we are, sharing stories like old friends." "Strangers united by necessity," Kale added wryly, poking at the fire with a stick. "Doesn't mean we trust each other completely." "No," Lyora agreed, her tone softening. "But maybe trust isn't what matters most. Maybe it's knowing that we're stronger together than apart." Nyx leaned back, stretching her arms above her head. Yeah, teamwork and all that mushy stuff. Just don't expect me to hug you anytime soon, human." Kale raised an eyebrow, smirking. "Wouldn't dream of it." Despite the banter, there was an undeniable bond forming between them, one forged in adversity and tempered by shared goals. As the fire burned low and the night grew quieter, Kale found himself reflecting on the changes within him. These two alien princesses had challenged his worldview, forcing him to confront emotions he'd long buried. They reminded him that even in the vastness of space, connection was possible, if only one was willing to reach out. By morning, the repairs were complete, and the Iron Resolve stood ready to resume its voyage. As they prepared to leave the moon behind, Cale paused at the edge of the crater, looking back at the desolate landscape. Somewhere along the way, he realized he'd stopped seeing this mission as merely a duty. It had become something more. A chance to prove that compassion transcended species, that unity could overcome division. With renewed determination, Cale boarded the ship, taking his place at the helm. Ahead lay unknown dangers, but also untold possibilities. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: they would face it together. And perhaps, just perhaps, that was in of ### Part 5. Trials of Trust. The final stretch of their journey to Valora was fraught with tension. Captain Cal Draven piloted the Iron Resolve through the last leg of space, his eyes scanning the stars for any sign of danger. The sisters, Lyora and Nyx, remained steadfast in their resolve, though exhaustion clung to them like a second skin. Days had turned into weeks since they'd fled their homeworld, pursued relentlessly by the Obsidian Accord. Now, as Valora loomed closer on the ship's sensors, hope mingled uneasily with fear. They were so near, yet the path ahead seemed narrower and more treacherous than ever. Tessa's voice broke the silence on the bridge. "Captain, I'm detecting multiple ships entering the system. Accord vessels." Cale clenched his jaw, leaning forward in his seat. "How many?" "6, Tessa replied after a moment's pause. "Heavily armed and faster than anything we've encountered before." Nyx groaned, pacing behind Cal. "Of course they show up now. Can't this thing go any faster?" She gestured irritably at the control panel. "We're at maximum speed already," Cale said tersely. His mind raced, calculating options. With the artifact's energy reserves nearly depleted and the Iron Resolve still recovering from its earlier battles, engaging in another fight was out of the question. But surrender wasn't an option either, not when the fate of countless worlds hung in the balance. Lyora stepped forward, her expression calm but resolute. "There's only one way to reach Valora safely: the Moonshade Expanse. It's a dense asteroid field surrounding the planet, guarded by ancient Zalari defenses. If we can navigate through it, the Accord won't be able to follow." Cale frowned, glancing at her. "And if we fail?" Lyora hesitated, her luminous eyes meeting his. "Then none of us make it out alive." The Moonshade Expanse was every bit as perilous as its name suggested. Massive asteroids tumbled chaotically through space, some large enough to dwarf entire cities. Between them flickered remnants of Zalari technology, floating sentinels programmed to destroy intruders. As the Iron Resolve entered the field, the ship shuddered violently under the strain of erratic gravitational pulls. "Stay sharp," Cale ordered, his hand steady on the controls. "Tessa, keep scanning for clear paths. One wrong move, and we're done for." "Understood," Tessa replied, her holographic form flickering slightly as she processed data rapidly. "Adjust heading 30 degrees starboard to avoid incoming debris." Cale adjusted the ship's trajectory just in time to dodge a massive asteroid hurtling toward them. Behind them, the Accord ships followed cautiously, unwilling or unable to match the nimbleness of the Iron Resolve. Still, their presence loomed like a shadow, pressing down on everyone aboard. Nyx gripped the back of Cale's chair, her knuckles white. "They're gaining ground. We need to lose them." "We will," Cale muttered, his focus unwavering. He spotted a narrow gap between two asteroids and steered the ship through it, narrowly avoiding collision. Sparks flew across the console as the shields absorbed minor impacts from smaller rocks. Suddenly, one of the floating sentinels activated, locking onto the Iron Resolve with a high-pitched whine. A beam of energy shot out, striking the ship's hull. Alarms blared throughout the cabin. Shields at 40%, Tessa warned urgently. Not good, Cale growled, veering sharply to evade another attack. Leora, Nyx, hold on tight. The sisters braced themselves as Cale executed a series of evasive maneuvers, weaving through the chaos with precision honed by years of combat experience. The sentinel fired again, missing by mere inches as the ship slipped past it. We're not going to make it like this, Nyx shouted, her voice tinged with panic. We need to use the artifact. Cale glanced over his shoulder, incredulous. Are you insane? That thing barely has any power left. Activating it prematurely could tear the ship apart. But it might buy us enough time to get through, Nyx insisted, her fiery determination unyielding. Leora placed a hand on her sister's arm, silencing her. She's right, Captain. We don't have a choice. Let me handle. Cale hesitated, torn between logic and desperation. Finally, he nodded curtly. Do what you have to do, but be quick about it. Leora rushed to the containment chamber where the heart of Eternis lay pulsing faintly. Placing her hands on its surface, she closed her eyes, focusing intently. The artifact responded immediately, its glow intensifying until it bathed the entire ship in radiant light. A wave of energy surged outward, disrupting the gravitational anomalies around them and temporarily disabling the sentinels. Now, Leora called out, her voice strained with effort. Go. Cale didn't hesitate. Pushing the throttle forward, he guided the Iron Resolve through the newly stabilized passage, leaving the Accord ships and the dangers of the Expanse behind. When they finally emerged into open space, Velora came into view, a breathtaking sight. The planet shimmered with iridescent hues, its atmosphere glowing softly like a pearl cradled by the cosmos. As they approached Velora's orbit, relief washed over the crew, but it was short-lived. The Accord ships, though slowed by the Expanse, had managed to regroup and were closing in once more. Worse still, a blockade of Accord cruisers awaited them, forming an impenetrable wall around the planet. They're cutting off our approach, Tessa reported grimly. We won't be able to land without engaging them. Cale slammed his fist against the console in frustration. There's no way we can take them all head-on. Leora stepped forward, her face pale but determined. There's another way. What are you talking about? Cale demanded, turning to face her. The artifact, Leora explained quietly. It holds the key to accessing Velora's sacred sanctum, the only place where it can be fully reactivated. But activating it here, outside the planet's protective fields, carries risks. It could destabilize the artifact completely, or worse, trigger a chain reaction that destroys everything nearby. Nyx looked horrified. You're saying we might die if we try this. I'm saying we'll definitely die if we don't, Leora replied firmly. This is why the Accord wants it. They know its power is uncontrollable unless used correctly. But if we succeed, we can turn their own weapon against them. Cale stared at her, weighing the stakes. Everything hinged on this moment. Their survival, the artifact's potential, and the future of both their species. He knew what he had to do. All right, he said finally, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside him. Let's do it. With trembling hands, Leora retrieved the artifact and brought it to the center of the bridge. Nyx stood beside her, clutching her sister's hand tightly. Cale took his position at the helm, preparing for whatever came next. Activating now, Leora whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of energy building within the artifact. Its glow intensified, filling the cabin with searing light. Outside, the Accord ships faltered momentarily, their systems disrupted by the surge of power. Then, without warning, the artifact unleashed a shockwave that rippled outward, engulfing the Iron Resolve in a cocoon of energy. For a brief, terrifying moment, it felt as though the very fabric of reality was unraveling. Then, just as suddenly, the light faded, leaving the ship intact but drained. We made it, Tessa confirmed, her tone awestruck. "The Accord blockade has been neutralized. We're clear to land." Exhaustion washed over the group as they realized they'd survived yet another impossible trial. Lyora sank to her knees, tears streaming down her face, not of sadness, but of relief. Nyx, who egged her fiercely, while Kale allowed himself a rare moment of vulnerability, leaning heavily against the console. They had reached Valora, but their journey was far from over. The true test awaited them on the surface, a challenge that would require every ounce of strength, courage, and trust they possessed. As the Iron Resolve descended toward the planet, Kale gazed out at the shimmering horizon, a strange sense of peace settling over him. Whatever happened next, they would face it together, as allies, as friends, and perhaps even as family. And in that unity, he found a glimmer of hope. For himself, for the Zalari, and for the countless lives depending on their success. Part 6. The Heart Awakens. The descent onto Valora was unlike anything Captain Cal Draven had ever experienced. As the Iron Resolve pierced through the planet's iridescent atmosphere. Vibrant colors danced across the viewport, shifting hues of gold, turquoise, and violet that seemed alive, pulsing in rhythm with the ship's thrusters. Below them stretched a landscape both alien and breathtaking. Sprawling crystalline forests shimmered under twin suns, their translucent leaves refracting light into dazzling rainbows. Rivers of liquid silver wound through valleys, while towering spires of obsidian rose like ancient sentinels against the horizon. But beauty alone did not define Valora. It radiated an energy, a presence, that resonated deep within Cal's chest, almost as if the planet itself were aware of their arrival. Beside him, Lyora stood silently, her luminous eyes wide with reverence. Even Nyx, usually brash and outspoken, seemed subdued, her fiery spirit tempered by awe. "This place," Lyora whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "It feels sacred." Kale nodded, though he couldn't fully articulate what he felt. There was something primal about Valora, something older than time itself. And yet it welcomed them, or so it seemed. For now, Tessa's holographic form flickered into view beside the console. Scans indicate the artifact is resonating with the planet's core. Its energy signature matches frequencies emitted by structures on the surface. "I believe we found the sanctum." "Then let's get moving," Kale said firmly, shaking off the strange sensation gripping him. Whatever mysteries Valora held, they didn't have time to marvel at its wonders. The Obsidian Accord would regroup soon, and when they did, there would be no mercy. Touching down near one of the crystalline spires, the group disembarked cautiously. The air was cool and fragrant, carrying the faint scent of ozone, mixed with something floral. Beneath their feet, the ground sparkled faintly, as though embedded with tiny gemstones. Ahead, a massive archway loomed, an entrance carved from smooth black stone adorned with intricate patterns that glowed softly in response to their presence. Lyora approached the archway first, running her fingers lightly over its surface. "This is it," she murmured, "the gateway to the sanctum. But we must prove ourselves worthy before entering." "Worthy?" Nyx echoed skeptically, crossing her arms. "What does that even mean?" "It means trials," Lyora explained, turning to face them. Her expression was solemn, tinged with apprehension. "Valora tests those who seek to wield its power. Courage, wisdom, unity, all will be measured. If we fail, the sanctum will deny us access, and likely trap us here forever." Kale frowned, stepping forward. "You're telling me this now, after everything we've been through." "I didn't want to burden you sooner," Lyora admitted quietly. "But yes, this has always been part of the journey." Nyx groaned, throwing up her hands. "Great, just great. First asteroids, then Accord ships, and now some cosmic pop quiz. What's next?" "A dance-off." Despite the tension, Kale allowed himself a faint smirk. Let's just focus on getting through this, one step at a time. As they passed beneath the archway, the world around them shifted. The crystalline forest disappeared, replaced by a vast, featureless plain bathed in golden light. In the distance stood 3 pedestals, each glowing with a different color: red, blue, and green. Between them hovered a sphere of pure energy, pulsing rhythmically like a heartbeat. A voice echoed in their minds, not spoken aloud, but felt directly within their thoughts. To awaken the heart of Eternus, you must demonstrate the virtues required to wield its power. Face these trials, and your worthiness shall be judged. Without waiting for further explanation, Kale moved toward the first pedestal, the one glowing red. Almost immediately, the ground beneath him began to crack, revealing molten lava bubbling ominously. Flames erupted around him, forcing him to dodge and weave as heat seared his skin. This was clearly the trial of courage. "You've got this," Nyx shouted from behind, her voice laced with both encouragement and anxiety. Kale gritted his teeth, focusing solely on survival. The flames formed shapes, snarling beasts, towering walls of fire. But he refused to falter. Each leap, each roll brought him closer to the pedestal, until finally he reached it. Placing his hand on its surface, the flames subsided instantly, leaving him breathless but victorious. Next came Leora's turn. She approached the second pedestal, the blue one, only to find herself surrounded by swirling mist. Within the haze, images materialized, memories of her past, moments of failure and loss. Voices whispered accusations, questioning her decisions, her leadership, her very identity. This was the trial of wisdom. At first, Leora hesitated, overwhelmed by doubt. But then she remembered why she was here, not for herself, but for her people. For hope. Drawing strength from that purpose, she silenced the voices and stepped forward confidently. Touching the pedestal, the mist dissipated, revealing a clear path ahead. Finally, it was Nyx's turn. The third pedestal, the green one, glowed brightly as vines erupted from the ground, wrapping tightly around her limbs. Struggling against them only made them constrict further, threatening to immobilize her entirely. Panic bubbled up inside her, but then she noticed something. The vines weren't attacking. They were testing. They responded to emotion, tightening when she resisted, loosening when she calmed. Taking a deep breath, Nyx forced herself to relax. Instead of fighting, she reached out mentally, connecting with the life force animating the vines. Slowly, they unraveled, releasing her completely. With a triumphant grin, she placed her hand on the pedestal, completing the final trial. As the last pedestal lit up, the sphere of energy descended, merging seamlessly with the heart of Eternus. The artifact pulsed brilliantly, its light enveloping the group in warmth and reassurance. Then, without warning, the vision changed once more. They found themselves standing before a colossal figure, an entity composed entirely of light and shadow. Its presence was overwhelming, yet strangely comforting. You have proven yourselves worthy the being intoned, its voice resonating through their very souls. But know this, the power of the heart is neither weapon nor shield. It is balance, a force meant to heal, not harm. Use it wisely, or risk destroying all you seek to protect. Before any of them could respond, the entity dissolved into streams of light, flowing back into the artifact. When the glow faded, the heart of Eternus rested peacefully in Leora's hands, whole and restored. Back outside the sanctum, Kale exhaled deeply, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. They had done it. They had awakened the heart. But as he looked at Leora and Nyx, he knew this was only the beginning. The obsidian accord still loomed large, and the true test of their alliance awaited them beyond Valora's borders. "We did it," Leora said softly, her voice filled with quiet triumph. "Together." "Yeah," Nyx added, smirking despite the exhaustion etched on her face. Teamwork really does make the dream work, huh? Cale chuckled dryly, shaking his head. Don't push it, kid. As they prepared to leave the sanctum, Cale glanced back at the glowing spire one last time. Something told him they'd never forget this place, or the lessons it had taught them. Unity, sacrifice, trust. It wasn't just about stopping the Accord. It was about proving that even in the vastness of space, compassion could bridge divides. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to change the galaxy ### Part 7. A New Dawn. The return journey from Velora was quieter than anyone expected. The heart of Eternus, now fully restored, pulsed faintly in Leora's hands, its energy a constant reminder of the trials they had endured and the power they now wielded. Captain Cal Draven piloted Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, with steady hands, his mind reflecting on everything that had transpired since rescuing the Zalari princesses. The ship hummed softly beneath them, carrying not just passengers but the seeds of hope for countless worlds. As they approached the edge of Velora's protective fields, the Obsidian Accord's forces came into view once more, dozens of ships forming a blockade, their weapons trained on the small vessel. Yet this time, fear didn't grip the crew. Instead, there was resolve. They knew what they had to do. Ready? Cale asked, glancing over his shoulder at Leora and Nyx. Leora nodded, her expression calm but determined. Let's end this. The moment Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, exited Velora's atmosphere, the Accord ships opened fire. Blasts of energy streaked through space, lighting up the void like fireworks. But instead of retaliating directly, Cale maneuvered the ship deftly, weaving between the attacks while Leora stepped forward, cradling the heart of Eternus in both hands. This is it, she whispered, closing her eyes. Concentrating deeply, she channeled the artifact's energy outward, creating a shimmering barrier around the ship. The Accord's weapons struck the barrier harmlessly, dissipating into harmless sparks. They're trying to break through, Nyx shouted, watching as multiple ships converged on their position. Her voice carried a mix of excitement and disbelief. What happens if they succeed? They won't, Leora replied firmly, her focus unwavering. She poured more of herself into the artifact, its glow intensifying until it filled the cabin with radiant light. Beyond the barrier, the Accord ships began to falter, their systems disrupted by the overwhelming energy emanating from the heart. Cale seized the opportunity, pushing the throttle forward and guiding Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, straight toward the center of the blockade. Hold tight, he called out, his tone commanding yet reassuring. With precision honed by years of combat experience, Cale navigated the ship through gaps in the chaos, each movement calculated to maximize confusion among the enemy ranks. When they reached the heart of the blockade, Leora unleashed another surge of energy from the artifact. This time, the effect was catastrophic for the Accord fleet. Dozens of ships were disabled instantly, their engines sputtering and dying as the heart's power overwhelmed them. It's working, Nyx exclaimed, her voice tinged with awe. They're falling back. But victory came at a cost. Leora staggered backward, her strength waning visibly. The artifact's energy was immense, and channeling it took a toll on her body and spirit. Nyx rushed to her side, steadying her sister as beads of sweat trickled down Leora's face. We need to finish this quickly, Leora said weakly, clutching the artifact tightly. I can hold it together, just a little longer. Cale nodded grimly, scanning the battlefield for the flagship, a massive cruiser adorned with black and gold insignias that marked it as the Accord's command vessel. If they could disable it, the remaining ships would lose cohesion and retreat. Tessa, lock onto the flagship. Redirect all available power to weapons. Affirmative, Tessa responded, her holographic form flickering slightly under the strain of the ship's systems. Moments later, Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, fired a concentrated burst of plasma directly at the flagship. The shot struck true, piercing its hull, and sending it spiraling out of control. Without their leader, the Accord fleet began to scatter, retreating into the depths of space. For the first time in weeks, silence reigned aboard Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk. The battle was over. They had won. Back on Velora's surface, the group stood before the crystalline spires one final time. The heart of Eternus lay embedded within an ancient pedestal, its energy now integrated into the planet's core. It would remain here, safeguarded by Velora's guardians, ensuring it could never be misused again. Leora turned to Kale, her luminous eyes filled with gratitude. "You've given us more than we could have hoped for. Because of you, my people, and countless others, have a chance at freedom." Kale shrugged modestly, avoiding her gaze. "I didn't do much. You two are the ones who faced the trials and awakened the heart. But none of it would have been possible without your courage," Leora countered gently. "And your compassion. You chose to help us when no one else would. That makes you a hero, whether you believe it or not." Nyx smirked, crossing her arms. Yeah, enough with the mushy stuff. Just promise you'll come visit sometime. Okay. I kind of got used to having you around." Kale chuckled dryly, shaking his head. "Don't push your luck, kid." Despite his gruff demeanor, there was warmth in his voice, a sign that their bond had grown beyond mere necessity. Over the course of their journey, these two alien princesses had become something unexpected. Allies, friends, and perhaps even family. As Kale boarded Asterisk, the Iron Resolve Asterisk, for the final leg of his journey home, he couldn't help but reflect on how much had changed. When he first encountered Leora and Nyx, he saw only strangers in need of rescue. Now he saw reflections of himself, individuals driven by duty, hope, and the desire to make a difference. Their struggles mirrored his own, and their victories reminded him that even in the vastness of space, connection was possible. On Earth, tales of the warrior who aided alien royalty spread quickly, sparking debates about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Some hailed Cal as a symbol of unity, proof that cooperation between species could lead to greater understanding. Others dismissed his actions as reckless, arguing that humans should focus on their own